information that really isn't dependent on the senses and can't be easily tested. They are more likely to trust hunches and go with their gut. The third measure.
But on the other hand, people who trust their intuition are more likely to trust information that really isn't dependent on the senses and can't be easily tested. They are more likely to trust hunches and go with their guts. The third measure
is about decision making, and this is divided into thinking and feeling.
The third measure is about decision making, and this is divided into thinking and feeling.
People who make decisions alone and use their reasoning and logistic skills to make decisions.
People who make decisions alone and use their reasoning and logistics skill to make decisions are called thinkers.
And on the other hand, people who seek harmony
and
consider all of the people involved in a situation and how decisions will affect everyone. Well, these people
affect everyone. Well, these
people are more likely to be an F or a feeler.
And these people are more likely to be an F. An F or a feeler.
The final measure is judging and perceiving.
Perceiving.
And this is all about how we deal with others and perceive details and
more likely to an F or a feeler. The final measure is judging and perceiving. And this is all about how we deal with others and
handle the outside world.
Perceive details and handle the outside world. Deal with others and perceive. 감지하다, 인지하다. Perceive details. 세부 사항을 인지하다. 무슨 말이지? 세부 사항을 인지하다. 인지하다. Be aware of something. 알아차리다. Perceive 한다는 게 동사로 notice or become aware of something. Perceive. 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 Think of someone being something state. 감지하다. 인지하다. Perceive details and handle the outside world. The outside world. 처리하다.
Judgers use thinking and feeling
Judges use thinking and feeling
when doing things, but
when doing things.
on the other hand,
But on the other hand,
perceivers tend to use
perceivers
sensing and
tend to use sensing,
intuition when doing
intuition
things.
when doing things. 인식형은 thinking이랑 feeling을 이용한다.
So then when we put everything together
So then, when we put everything together
and you finish doing your MBTI test,
and you finish doing your MBTI test,
you get a 4-letter code which corresponds to your personality type.
you get a 4-letter code. You get a 4-letter code which correspond
Correspond.
Correspond.
correspond
Correspond.
correspond
Correspond. Correspond.
correspond 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 이거는 to your personality type 뭐뭐와 일치하다 부합하다 일치하다 상응하다
For example, an
For example,
ESTJ is a person how we deal with others and receive details and handle the outside world. Judgers use thinking and feeling when doing things, but on the other hand, perceivers tend to use sensing and intuition when doing things. So then when we put everything together and you finish doing your MBTI test, you get a 4-letter code which corresponds to your
correspond 발음이 어렵네 correspond which correspond to your personality
type.
personality type
For example, an ESTJ is
For example, an ESTJ
a person who prefers extroversion
is a person who prefers extroversion. Extroversion. introversion,
sensing, thinking,
sensing,
and
thinking,
judging,
and judging,
or an
or
INFP
an INFP
is a person
is
who
a person
prefers
who
introversion into
introversion,
intuition, feeling, and perceiving. And
and
there are 16
perceiving.
different letter combinations.
And there are 16 different letter combinations. Different combination. combination. 나 A 발음해. combination.
Different personality types that can result from doing the
Myers-Briggs. Myers-Briggs.
So in a nutshell, that's what the
MBTI
is all about. And now let's welcome Anna to this episode and get started with our conversation about this psychological test and what our opinions of the Myers-Briggs are.
Here we go.
So, Anna, let's talk about our MBTIs.
Yeah, I'd love to. I absolutely love this topic today.
Yeah, I'd love to. I absolutely love to this topic today.
And one thing I think is really interesting is that this personality test was developed by a mom and a daughter team.
And one thing I think is really interesting. And one thing I think is really interesting is
I don't know. I don't think I could ever imagine working with my mom closely like that.
I don't know. I don't think I could ever imagine working with my mom closely like that.
When I was an adult. Could you?
When I was an adult.
Andrew.
Could you,
I
Andrew?
found that really interesting too, and
I found that really interesting too, and
I can't picture it. I
can't picture it.
Ever imagine myself developing a personality test.
I can't ever imagine myself developing a personality test
with my mom in this lifetime, at least. But it is a fun little.
In this lifetime. 이번 생에서. 현생에서. 이번 생에서. I can't ever imagine myself developing a personality test with mom in this life. I can't even imagine myself 현생에서 이번 생에서
MBTI that I think some people may not know about.
But it is a fun little fact about the MBTI that I think some people may not know about.
I could not imagine working with my mum like this, so I give credit.
Right, I could not imagine working with my mom like this, so like this. Yeah, I couldn't imagine.
Them for being able to produce something out of.
I give credit to them for being able to produce something out of that.
But why don't we start with trying to guess what each other's profiles are, or what each other's personalities are?
What each other's personalities are.
Yeah, I think that is a fun way to do this.
And yeah, I think that is a fun way to do this, Anna.
Now, before we just share with everybody what kind of results we got.
Before we just share with everybody what kinds of results
on the personality test that we did.
We got on the personality test that we did.
We will try to guess each other's.
We will try to guess each other's.
So just before we started recording, and I went over all of the 16 different kinds of personality types on the MBTI.
I went over all of the 16 different kinds of personality types on the MBTI. Go over the 뭐다?
And I was trying to imagine what one matches your personality best.
And I was trying to imagine what one matches your personality best.
It was difficult, to be honest, there.
It was difficult, to be honest.
Were several that I thought that you could fit into.
There were several that I thought that you could fit into.
But the one that I decided on is ENFJ.
But the one that I decided on is ENFJ. Decided on decided 뜻이 있었어. 몸으로 정하다. 몸으로 정하다.
ENFJ. Am I right?
Am I right?
You're wrong by one.
You're wrong by one.
You're wrong with one of them.
You're wrong with one of them.
With one though.
한 개는 틀렸다. Wrong by one. Wrong by one. 한 개가 틀렸다. 하나가 틀렸다. Why one? Why one? 한 개 차이로인가? 하나 차이로 틀렸다.
And this is interesting because I tend to fool a lot of people because a lot of people think that
I tend to fool a lot of people. Fool. I tend to fool. Fool. I tend to fool a lot of people. People, because a lot of people think that I would be
ENFJ, but
ENFJ, but I'm
actually
Actually-
INFJ.
wow, INFJ.
I've got all of those, so you've done really well.
I've got all of those. So
Well, in those last three, but I'm actually
you've done really well in those last three.
introverted and not extroverted.
Introverted. I'm not extroverted, but
it can be a bit of a trick because sometimes
it can be a bit of a trick. Yeah. Trick. Trick. 헷갈리는 부분. It can be a bit of a trick because triggers is triggers 있다. Something done to surprise or confuse someone and to make other people laugh. 트릭일 수가 있다.
when I'm at work, for example, or with you, or with
When I'm at work, for example, or with you, or with
when I'm in a really comfortable situation,
when I'm in a really comfortable situation. Comfortable 아니 comfortable. comfortable. 발음을 조심해야겠다. comfortable. 이렇게 말해.
I think people perceive me as being extroverted.
I think people perceive me as being extroverted. 나를 뭐라고 생각해? 그걸 뭐로 알아? 이거를 뭐로 알아? perceive me 받아들여. perceive 자체가 notice, become aware of it. 인지하다. perceive. perceive. To notice. To notice or become aware of, or become aware of something.
But actually, the reality is that I'm for sure 100% introverted.
But actually, the reality is that I'm for sure 100% actually introverted. For sure 100% introverted.
And also, it's interesting to note that introvert.
And also, it's interesting to note that introvert.
I think has a bad rep because
I think has a bad rap. Has a bad rap. 한판이 나왔다. Have a bad poor reputation. 평판이 나쁘다. Reputation. Reputation. Bad rap.
when people say introverted, they're like,
I think when people say introverted, they are like,
oh, it means somebody that never says anything. They're super
it means somebody that never says anything.
shy.
They are super shy. bad question. 평판이 좋다는 거.
And it could mean that, but for me, it's more about you need time by yourself.
You need time. It's more about you need time by yourself.
And being really, really social
Being really, really social
is very draining sometimes.
is very draining sometimes. Draining. draining 한다. draining. drain. 돈을 빼내가다. 빼내다. 빼내가다. 소모시키다. 돈을 재를 빼내다. 빠지다. 이게 drain.
In some situations. So for your type,
I
think that you are
that
pretty
you
similar
are pretty
to
similar
me.
to me.
I think you're an introvert.
I think you're an introvert.
From what you told me and the way that
From what you've told me. From what you've told me. From what you've told me. 중요한 표현 같은데. From what you've told me. 어딨지? From what you told me. 네가 말한 걸로 봐서는 I think you're an introvert from what you've told me and the way that we know each other 하는 걸로 봐서는 told me 나한테 말하는 걸로 봐서는 나한테 말하는 걸로 봐서는 from what you've told me 당신이 나에게 말한 것을 보면 from what you've told me 말하는 것으로 봐. 너가 나에게 말하는 것으로 보아. 또는 봐서. 너가 나한테 말하는 걸로 봐서는 것으로 말하는 걸로 봐서는 말하는 걸로 봐서는 너가 나에게 말하는 걸로 봐서는 the way that we know each other 우리가 서로 알기로는 way that we know each other
we know each other. So I think you might be
you might
more or
be
less around my personality type.
more or less around my personality type. More or less. More or less around her. 거의라는 뜻이나 봐. 거의 more or less 거의나 거의 약이나 대략이란 뜻도 있네. 거의 약 대략쯤 이런 것도 있고. 그렇구나. Might be more or less around my personality type. Around 그것도 쯤인데. More or less.
definitely going to say introverted.
I'm definitely gonna say introverted. 난 확실히 introverted라고 할 거야.
Yes, I am.
Do you know what? I'm going to say INTJ.
Do you know what I'm gonna say INTJ? Do you know what 나는 INTJ라고 할래. Do you know what I'm gonna say?
We got opposite scores.
We got opposite scores. Opposite scores. Opposite. We got opposite scores. opposite score야? opposite scores. 일단은 발음은 opposite이야. opposite scores. 맞은편이 정반대? 반대? 왜?
I got 3 out of 4 and you got 1 out of 4.
반대다. 정반대. 점수가 반대다. opposite scores and I got 3 out of 4. 나는 4개 중에 3개 맞췄고 you got 1 out of 4. 맞추다가 되겠네. 맞추다. 아, 성적을 봤다. 이런 뜻이 있으니까. 말이 맞다, 이해하다. 그건 get a score. 이 중에서 4개 중에 3개를 맞추다. 맞췄고 나는 4개 중에서 1개를 맞췄어. 여기서가 시각게 쓰이는구나. 3 out of 4. Got 3 out of 4 and you got 1 out of 4.
Disaster.
참사다. Disaster. 참사다. 또는 완전한 실패작이다. 완전한 실패작.
All right, okay. So what's yours?
So what's yours? 실패자다. 완전 실패자. 완전 실패. 완전 실패. 완전 실패는 이거. Disaster. Disaster. Complete or terrible failure. 이런 뜻이 있어. 완전한 실패. 완전한 실패. 완전한 실패. 그리고 또 하나가 참사나 재난, 재해 이런 뜻이 있고 엄청난 불행, 재앙 이런 뜻이 있대. Disaster. 전 실패는 disaster. 좀 실패했다.
So I am an ISFP.
I'm an ISFP.
ISFP, which I thought was a little bit surprising to me.
I thought was a little bit surprising to me. 좀 놀라웠어.